Welcome to the Webinar Talk Show. I'm Liz Green.
And I'm Tom Singer. And Eliz and I started the Webinar Talk Show because we know that informational webinars and other meetings, they can be so much better than talking heads over PowerPoint. Don't you agree, Eliz?
I completely agree, Tom. Absolutely. And we're taking a little bit of a detour from our Don't Cancel Your Event theme for the season because there's something coming up next week that might be stressing people out a little bit.
What is happening next week that is stressing people out? Oh my gosh, we have an election in the United States next week, don't we?
Well, it would be hard to tell because no one is saying anything about it. You're not seeing any ads on television or
my phone never rings, and nobody on Facebook talks about the election.
I'm not receiving texts nonstop. Yeah.
Well,
so pretty much we're all aware of what's happening.
But this is a crazy, crazy election cycle. And for those of you who may or may not know, my wonderful co-host, Eliz Green, she has spent like the last 4 years doing research around stress and uncertainty. And 2020, I mean, it's like an Easter basket of stress and uncertainty, and the election just adds to this. So we thought it would be a good idea just to have a short talk about how do you handle that? How do you handle conversations at work? Thanksgiving is going to come up right after the election, so you're going to be with family members. And we decided that I would just talk to Eliz as our guest today because she is one of the best experts out there on really handling these sort of unpredictable and unforeseen things that are going on. So Eliz, let's just dive right in. Why is there so much stress around the election this time?
Well, so interestingly enough, I actually looked back on my blog to see how often I'd written about election stress. And it turns out I do it just about once every 4 years.
Okay. So this isn't as new as we might think.
It is not new. And in fact, there is a disorder that is recognized, an election stress disorder, because an election is inherently uncertain and stressful because it is uncertain. Because when you think about it, what an odd thing we do in our country. We completely upend our leadership every 4 years or 2 years, depending on your term, or 6 years for senators. So we are constantly sort of flipping them over potentially. That in itself is stressful. Then when you add on top of that, marketing messages, which is all that political ads are. They're marketing messages, and marketing messages are designed to make you have an emotional reaction, whether that's a yes, that makes me feel good, or that makes me feel scared or angry, or whatever it is absolutely designed to trigger an emotional response. A lot of that results in a stress response. If you're over there in the scared, angry area, that is causing you to have a stress reaction. It's designed exactly that way. And a lot of that scared, angry messaging is designed to really dive into that doom and gloom, like the world is terrible and it's going to get worse. And all of this, if this person wins, it's going to be terrible. If that person doesn't win, it's going to be terrible. It's all of that just stirs up the stress reaction. That's a normal year. This year. Normal.
This year it seems to be a little more heightened, but I'm actually a big fan of the musical Hamilton. And if you really go back and look in the early days of our country, they were divided. They said horrible things about each other. Hamilton and Burr and Hamilton and Jefferson, were about as bad as political rivals as ever existed. I mean, Burr shot Hamilton. So the reality is our country has maybe always had this division and we just forget.
I think we do. But this year, we're layering this uncertainty and stress on top of a pandemic, issues in our economy, and a increasing awareness that racism is an ongoing problem. Mm-hmm. Racism isn't a new problem. We're now so aware. It is, which is good, I think. It's uncomfortable for certain, but all of these things layered on top of each other, this stress has reached such a pitch that people are really struggling, because what happens when we live under that amount of stress, we have symptoms that maybe we don't quite understand. That all of a sudden we are feeling angry because Zoom updated and now it doesn't work the way we expected it to work. If you're finding that an update to one of your apps, or having to put your passwords in again because your operating system updated, that's maybe not a reaction to that particular update. It's probably the fact that all of this stress and uncertainty is piled on. And
is that an example? Is that an example of my friend who absolutely hates the new look of the new Facebook, and every time, all he can do is freak out? Is that probably one of those things where there's more to it than Facebook changed the look of their page?
Yeah, if it was next October, that would not be a big deal. I'm willing to bet. But all of this on top of everything else, changing one more thing being difficult or uncertain, it's like, I can't take anymore. That's where a lot of us are. If you're finding yourself not being able to fall asleep or waking up in the middle of the night thinking about something somebody said on Facebook, this is probably a symptom that your stress level is pretty high.
So 2020, we're having a perfect storm of all of these things that by themselves trigger stress and uncertainty. So let's look at your research. How can we deal with stress and uncertainty, even when it's just one thing, let alone four converging problems?
So one of the things that my research shows is if you can figure out something you can control about the situation and take action to control it, it makes you feel more secure, which sort of lessens that impact of the uncertainty and can lower your stress. So it just tamps it down a little bit, which is great. There are lots of things in our world that we can control. There are lots of things we can't. Knowing the difference is really important. One of the ways that we can control the situation with the election is to vote.
Yes, go vote, everybody. Voting is super important, no matter who you support. Get out and vote.
Absolutely. My father used to say that you forfeit your right to complain for the next 4 years if you don't vote.
And
nice.
Doesn't voting actually give people a sense then that they have some control because they themselves have pushed the button for the person who will bring them less stress?
Well, hopefully that's true. And let's be honest that on November 4th, when hopefully we have results,
November 8th, 9th, 10th.
I am personally, one of my coping mechanisms is to convince myself that we are not going to know on November 3rd who won this election. I don't think in my state, in Wisconsin, the people who count the ballots can't stop counting once they start. So they are going to have to count all the way through the night and into the next day to count all the ballots. There are a lot of people who are raising their hands right now to serve, not only as candidates, but as election officials and poll workers and all of that. Let's give them a little grace and a little gratitude.
And apparently in Wisconsin, a little coffee.
A little coffee?
A little coffee. If they have to count all night, they're going to have to stay awake.
Yeah. Hopefully they have some people rolling through to help, but it is going to be a tremendous effort to get all of those ballots counted, because right now in Wisconsin, it is wild in Wisconsin right now, let me just say, we've had a huge number of people who have voted early, whether that's dropping things off at their local village hall or whatever it is, or mailing it in, or we have actual early voting at polling stations. So we know this is going to be a large turnout in our state. So I'm convincing myself We're not going to know those results. Maybe not on November 1st, 4th or 5th, maybe, as you said, the 8th. Whenever we find out, there are some people who are going to be happy with that result, and there are going to be some people who are unhappy with that result.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I'm quoting my dad a lot today. One of the things my dad used to say was quit awfulizing. And awfulizing he was a psychologist. It was a term he used to describe that things are bad. They're not going to get any better. It's that sort of spiraling down in thoughts about this is going to be awful.
Sort of the Eeyore complex. Woe is me.
Well, not even woe is me. Woe is the world. Because we can get sort of woe is me about things, but the world is spiraling down is where a lot of us are, where there is so much importance placed on this election. And I'm not saying it isn't important. It is important. Vote. You need to vote. But I can guarantee that the sun is going to rise and set. The people that you love are still going to be in your life. There are a lot of things that are going to stay the same. The world is not going to end because there's a result of our election. The world will keep on turning. We'll all keep working on what we believe is important. It's okay. So one of the things that we can do is not awfulize about the situation. Keep it in perspective. Not saying it isn't important, it is, but we need to keep perspective about it and really have a realistic expectation about what's going to happen over the next 2 weeks. It is going to increase in our uncertainty, in our frustration probably, and our stress, but we don't have to dive into that. If you voted, good for you. You have permission to disconnect. Snooze the things on Facebook, maybe just stay off of Facebook. You don't have to consume all of these media messages. There are ways to avoid it. We don't watch network television. It helps. If you're using a streaming service, you don't get those ads in the same way. If you're looking on YouTube, they all of a sudden are creeping in. Oh my. So
yes,
choosing how you're going to consume media can reduce that level of stress and uncertainty.
And I heard you say once that by reading your media,
Mm-hmm.
less stressful than watching it on television or on a video.
Right. When our brains are watching a video, we want to jump into the story. It is why those messages work so well. Because if you have the swelling, inspirational, like we're all in this together, it makes you feel good and you want to jump in and feel like you're marching right along with those people in the video. We want to do that. Our brains just automatically do that. The same happens if it's one of those gloom and doom messages. Our brains want to jump in and it's dealing with all of that gloom and doom. I can read something in the newspaper. I read a newspaper on my iPad every day. I can read something that I don't agree with. It might upset me. I might be, what are they doing that? But I'm not jumping into the story. It's a different emotional reaction and a different stress reaction. The video just pumps up that emotional reaction much, much easier.
So what I've seen that adds to a lot of people's stress is the collision course of people in their lives, whether it's coworkers, family members, friends, and others who have different political beliefs than them in this election cycle. And we saw it 4 years ago where people were saying, who did you vote for? And then they unfriended everybody who voted for the opposite candidate. How do we deal with people in our lives, be it at work or socially, who have different views than we do?
We have always had people in our lives that have had different views than us. We used to have rules around that. It used to be rude to ask people, well, who did you vote for? Unless you have that relationship with them.
I got to jump in here because this is interesting. I got a text, like a Facebook text from a former coworker who I'm not that close with. And the question was, are you on team the candidate that he was for? And I was, and I said yes. And he said, oh, good. And I said, why are you asking me that? And he said, I'm eliminating people who are voting for that other guy from my life. And I'm glad to know, I wasn't sure about you. I'm glad to know that you're voting this particular way. And I'm glad he didn't unfriend me, but I was like, wow, that was fascinating.
It's hard because it's become this litmus test for our relationships. And I have two things I want to say, and I'm saying this to Tom, those of you who are watching, so we make sure that I tell you both. The first one is that it is absolutely possible to have long-standing relationships with people who you disagree with. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. In your family, in your close relationship friends, you can do that. We have we sail in the summer, just put our boat away. We race on Friday nights. We have people who come onto our boat who race with us. The rule on Friday night racing is that we never talk about politics, because I know that there are topics that we are not going to agree about. And that's okay. It doesn't make a difference in terms of how well we can perform as a team. It just doesn't. And we don't have those conversations because we don't have to have those conversations. It's not a litmus test about whether or not I want you on my boat. It's okay. And it is totally all right to say, you know what, we're not going to talk about that. There are a billion other things that we could talk about. We don't have to make this a litmus test for whether or not we're going to be friends. So that's the first one. The second one of the things that I think is a useful phrase to have in your head is, what if this is the best they can do? And I have used this on many of the occasions where someone is driving me crazy. Like their behavior is out of line and I don't get it and I don't understand why they're doing it. And whatever gentle questioning or whatever I've tried to do isn't working. I then ask myself, what if this is the best they can do?
Makes it a lot easier to get along with that brother or that uncle at Thanksgiving, doesn't it?
So I want to change that for this situation right now. What if this is the best decision they can make? They're basing it on something. You may completely disagree with that decision, but what if this is the best decision they can make? Who are you to say that that's not the right decision for them?
Mm-hmm. And, when I look at the numbers in the polls, we are a split country. I might not agree with what's going on the other side, but there are some people who are well-educated and thoughtful and smart. We tend to dismiss people on the other side as, oh, they're idiots. And the reality is people have a lot of reasons for doing a lot of things and they're well-educated and they've made their decision. So I think that you bring up a really good piece of advice, is just let them be them and let them raise the jib on your sail. That doesn't make you a good or a bad sailor if you're voting for a different candidate.
Correct. And that is actually how our country is designed. We are supposed to have divergent views participating in our government. Now, that is inherently difficult, right? But that is how we're designed. And when we think about that, one of the things that I think is very difficult right now is that no matter which side you're on, that other side is being called all kinds of names. I'm not going to go to what kind of names they're being called. But the thing that I would like us all to remember is each of those people raised their hands and said, I would like to serve. And as a person who has held an elective office in the past, those are not easy jobs.
No, I tip my hat to you and everyone else who has served on a school board through the highest levels of government.
Right. So they had the bravery to raise their hands and say, I would like to serve. Let's celebrate the fact that we actually have people in our world who will volunteer to take on really hard jobs. Now, you can criticize the job that person has done. That's what elections are. They are job reviews. If you don't like what that person has done, well, vote for somebody else. If you did, vote for them. I have voted for people in all parties because I thought they did a good job, or I thought they would do a good job. That's what this is about. If we could just step back, have a little humility, and I tend to arrogant. I will admit that I tend to arrogant in like, I think I'm right. I think I should be able to convince you that I'm right. But let's have a little humility. Think about that other person making a choice because they are basing it on something. Maybe we should just allow for that. Maybe we can just say, you know what? Let's not talk about politics. Let's talk about something else.
So let's spin this before we wrap it up into the workplace. A lot of people who are watching this right now or watching the video replay later, they work in companies where there are divergent opinions when it comes to the politics of the world that's going on right now and this election and beyond. How do you deal with it in the workplace, whether if you're a manager or if you're just part of the rank and file employees, when there are people at work who you do not agree with?
I think the best strategy is to find something that you do agree about. With almost everybody, there is going to be something that you share in common, whether it's that you both have kids and, 3-year-olds are hard or whatever it is, finding something that you do agree about and working from there. And again, I will say, you don't have to talk about politics. It is one aspect of our society. It's an important aspect, but it's one aspect of our society. And if we dig in so hard to say either you're with me or you're not with me, that is eliminating a lot of people from our lives.
Sure, absolutely. So we go through next week, we have an election, and then we have to heal, regardless of who the winner is of the presidency. What tips do you have for people to personally heal if they come out on the side that doesn't win or keep the White House?
Or any. I mean, there are so many offices that are up for grabs at the moment. For example, I care very deeply about who is going to serve our district in the state assembly. That is an important race to me. So yes, there's a potential that I could be really upset about the outcome of that particular election. It's the same advice I've been giving for a while. We can reset our point of view. We are programmed as human beings to look for problems to solve. This is one of the reasons all of this is so difficult for us, because there are all of these problems we can't solve. And we certainly can't solve them alone. But if we could redirect our point of view in a more positive direction, it makes such a difference in how, if you can do that in the morning, it makes a difference how you live the rest of the day. So whether that's going back to what I said about that coworker, finding something that you agree on. I am a huge fan, and I know you are too, Tom, of Dr. Bertice Berry.
Oh.
She's a story. Yeah, right?
Phenomenal.
The way to reset your day, in my opinion, is to spend 5 minutes with Dr. Bertice Berry.
She does those short 5-minute videos every single day, and they're on YouTube, they're on Facebook, they're on Instagram, they're probably on Twitter. It doesn't matter what you use. Bertice Berry has, first of all, her voice is so much fun and soothing, but her point of view on the world does help you reset. So that's a good start. Her or someone else who touches your soul.
Right. Anything that helps you just reset, to think about the things that are good in our world, because there is so much. Even in all of this chaos, there is so much that is truly good. So watch a video of, some little kid singing a song that's adorable, or whatever it is that makes you feel more connected to the goodness in the world and less connected to the chaos. That, for me, that's the magic.
Awesome. So any final tips before we wrap up this episode?
Keep in mind that the world will go on after this election is over. And in fact, that's how it's set up. We have these upheavals every 4 years, and then the country gets back to work. Mm-hmm. You actually have a role to play in our democracy. Vote, 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 because that's the role that you're supposed to play. When it is all done, whatever day that happens in November, when it's all done, don't stop being involved. Talk to your local representative, to your school board members, all the way up to communicating with the person in the White House. That is our role to play as citizens. It doesn't end on November 3rd. You just keep going, because I'm going to coin Dr. Bertice Sperry's line, we're all in this together.
So, Eliz, I know that several companies and associations have reached out to you recently to do presentations for them on stress around the election, both before and after the election. So I know your calendar for the next few weeks is getting a little bit full. If somebody wants to learn more about what you teach about stress and uncertainty, either in this time or down the line for other stresses that will pop up, because I'm sure of one thing, there'll be more stresses ahead. How do they find you if they need to have sort of the education that you provide?
You can find me at elizgreen.com. It has an E at the beginning and an E at the end, ELIZGREENE.com. Or you can find me at webinartalkshow.com. That's all part of what we do. And I want to say, one of the things that you can do to reduce your stress is have great conversations with somebody who is just a delight, which is why I have been so happy to be doing this 2 times a week with you, Tom.
Because it's been the highlight of my COVID quarantine, is twice a week, not only sharing the platform here with you, but you and I have interviewed some really smart and super cool people over 60 plus episodes of the Webinar Talk Show. And we're not quitting, right? We're going to keep doing this.
We are going to keep doing this, mostly because I don't know that I can go without anymore. We took that little hiatus and I was sad.
Yes, this has been a lot of fun. So everybody, I hope you're enjoying these episodes of the Webinar Talk Show. If you want to see more, you can go to webinartalkshow.com or our Facebook page. Please like it, share it with your friends. And we've got some really good interviews coming up next week, don't we?
Oh, we do. We are going to talk with Brian Walter about how he's taking Extreme Meetings, his business with his wife, Karen, into the virtual world. That's going to be a good one. It's always just fun to talk to Brian, but I know he's going to have such good information. And then on Wednesday, we have Amy Landino, who her business is around Vlog Like a Boss. So she's been doing video for a long time, very, very effectively. Yep. And come and talk with us about how video can be extraordinarily effective in terms of creating community and delivering high quality information.
And she knows, she sort of invented it. So that's awesome. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. We'll be back in a couple of days. In the meantime, go out there and have a great day.
You too. Have a good day, Tom. Have a good day, everybody. Bye.